Hello, friends. Nice to be with you again. We see that people have joined the class from around different places, different countries around the world, which is very encouraging. The Remember that the course is reading the writings of Shoghi Effendi. Now, one of the great wonders of the Guardian is that he's layered things from stage to stage in the development of the cause. He's been teaching the Baha'is gradually. I mean, he's given us these quotations that we have here from the dispensation that we've been reading. Then later he adds to those the immortal passages in the Advent of Divine Justice, and then many more important passages about the writings and their significance in the promised days come. Then he finally we arrive at the magnificent vision of the century, the volume God Passes By. And there he reviews what he's placed before us previously. Doesn't quote it entirely, but makes references to it. One of the things that's greatly elaborated in chapter 5 of God Passes By is the relationship of the faith to the dispensations and revelations gone before it. And there he cites from the holy books and the scriptures of past religions, and right up to the prophecies from Sheikh Ahmad and Said Kazim, and then the Bab. All of this is there, and it needs to be looked at and identified and searched out. In God Passes By, there's a passage where this is part of chapter 5, where he asks certain questions, which of course are questions that we need to consider too in relationship to what he's presenting. What we may well inquire at this juncture were the nature and implications of that revelation which, manifesting itself so soon after the declaration of the Bab, abolished at one stroke the dispensation which that faith had so newly proclaimed, and upheld with such vehemence and force the divine authority of its author. What we may well pause to consider were the claims of him who, himself a disciple of the Bab, had at such an early stage regarded himself as empowered to abrogate the law identified with his beloved master. What we may further reflect could be the relationship between the religious systems established before him and his own revelation, a revelation which, flowing out in that extremely perilous hour from his travailing soul, pierced the gloom that had settled upon that pestilential pit, of course, a reference to Serchal, and bursting through its walls and propagating itself as far as the ends of the earth, infused into the entire body of mankind its boundless potentiality, and is now under our very eyes shaping the course of human society. How, friends, how much we need to understand this and realize the reaction of the whole of mankind to the energies released from Baha'u'llah from the beginning of his prophetic mission, and then right through to the end with the setting of the Sun of Truth in Akka in 1892. And we have this vision of the Guardian. You know, we're commanded in the writings of faith, we see he suggests to us that we need, if we want to see Baha'u'llah, we have to see him with his eye. If we want to understand him and his writings, we have to see with his ear and see with his eye and hear with his ear. Imagine, this is a tremendous thing he's calling us to. Now, could we imagine that the Guardian hasn't vaulted into that position through the succession that he represents and his position as the interpreter of the cause? He's the sign of God on earth, and he has his eye on all of human destiny. And he's inspired by the vision of Baha'u'llah and by the utterances of Baha'u'llah, and penetrates to their innermost meaning. And we are assured that he has the support both of Baha'u'llah and the Bab and Abdul Baha in the pronouncements that he makes. It's a terrific heritage that he has, and which we have become the inheritors, so to speak. So we need to move back and forth through these various works of Shoghi Effendi to increasingly clarify our understanding and nature of the revelation, and to answer some of these questions that were posed here as I was reading from God Passes By. Shoghi Effendi goes on to say in the paragraph, he who in such dramatic circumstances was made to sustain the overpowering weight of so glorious a mission was none other than the one whom posterity will acclaim, and whom innumerable followers already recognize as the judge, the lawgiver, and redeemer of all mankind, as the organizer of the entire planet, as the unifier of the children of men, as the inaugurator of the long-awaited millennium, as the originator of a new universal cycle, as the establisher of the most great peace, as the fountain of the most great justice, as the proclaimer of the coming of age of the entire human race, as the creator of a new world order, and as the inspirer and founder of a world civilization. Go back to your God Passes By and review this list, which will help center us on so much on the importance of the manifestation with respect to everything that's going to happen on the planet, that is happening now and that's going forth into the future. It's a terrific vision that he offers us. Now we want to go back to these quotations which Shoghi Effendi has gathered in the dispensation, in which he refers to as among the essential verities of the faith, the truths of the faith. Why is this? Why are all of these so important? Why is this position and definition of the role of Baha'u'llah so important? Think of the Kitab-i-Aqdas. Think of the opening line of the Kitab-i-Aqdas, where he says the first, he's addressing mankind. What first duty of every every human being on the planet is the recognition and acceptance of the manifestation of God in this day. Now, all the forces of the faith, if I understand correctly, are centered on the fulfillment of that responsibility, on assisting mankind. He says that we've been given the duty, and it comes to us through the tablets of the divine plan and through the invocations of Baha'u'llah to arise and teach his cause, to proclaim his cause to every soul. And if we find someone receptive, when they hear about that it exists and what it is and the name of its founder and the fact that it's a new world religion, if they move towards that, then teach them if they're attracted and want to know more about the faith. This is like the center of our being with respect to the Kitab-i-Aqdas and the needs of the cause of God in the world. And this is, of course, addressed to us as individuals to fulfill that responsibility. So this is a teaching mandate from Baha'u'llah at the level of the individual, which never ceases day and night. And we're told, don't rest. Arise and make it the center of your lives. Center your life on the propagation of the cause of God. And this is friends, is really a call to direct teaching, which, for as you well understand, is is tempered by wisdom depending on the character of who we're addressing, the people that we're speaking to, how open we are or how much we give them. Or sometimes Shoghi Effendi said we use material in our conversation, perhaps in your elevated conversations, material which prompts the other person to inquire, to ask a question. Excuse me, it's always better to move through these questions. That's a convenient way really to address people's needs. And we want to look and see, we want to also listen to the people that we're addressing. If they show no interest, we don't insist on anything. We don't argue with anybody, but Baha'u'llah has enjoined upon us to pray for those souls that we've spoken to. Perhaps the seeds of Baha'u'llah's name, of the very existence of Baha'i, have locked somewhere into their inner being and sit there and radiate and begin to make them more receptive eventually to the message of the faith. Now, in our collective activities, we're moving through a series of steps to attract people to the nature of our teachings, to the importance of developing neighborhoods, of developing the beginning steps of divine civilization. And this also acts in a general way to attract souls. My own understanding is, as I think has been amply supported by the plan itself, is that we can't expect to accomplish great things in terms of social action while we're still quite reduced in numbers and possibilities. But the very fact that we have such goals, the well-being of mankind and towards the future, is a comfortable attraction point for gathering more friends to the faith and into our activities, into the spread of our programs. And that is something we want to watch. But I hope we never lose sight of this first line of the Akdas, that we don't neglect to at least inform the people that we're dealing with about the existence of the cause and the importance of covenant with the manifestation of God in this day. There's a lot of emphasis on that in the tablets of Baha'u'llah, and we want to understand it as best we can. So I think, friends, we want to now go back to these quotations that we've been quoting from the dispensation of Baha'u'llah. I presume you can now see this quotation that's on the screen here. So within the context of what we've been speaking about so far this morning, for instance, this all-encompassing vision of the guardian, how is he selected out of the whole ocean of the revelation these particular quotations to nail down, to establish clearly the foundations of our understanding of the station of Baha'u'llah and the role of his revelation in this day? Seize your chance, inasmuch as a fleeting moment in this day excelleth centuries of a bygone age. What an extraordinary comparison. Neither sun nor moon hath witnessed a day such as this. Quite unique. It's evident that every age in which a manifestation of God hath lived is divinely ordained and may in a sense be characterized as God's appointed day. This day, however, is unique and to be distinguished from those that have preceded it. And then he caps this explanation with this phrase: the designation seal of the prophets fully reveals and demonstrates its high station. Now, seal of the prophets has become a veil for the Muslims. The way it's been taught is that that means the end of prophethood, the end of messages from God. There's no more revelation from God after that. Thoroughly contradicted by the holy books of the past and by the revelation of Baha'u'llah himself. There's a misunderstanding which has created a veil uh, for many Muslims to hear the cause, because they're so used to the idea that that's the end. It's like the Christian one that says that Christ is coming and nothing else is coming, and that's it. We understand by the very nature of progressive revelation that there is a continuity in all of these divinely ordained days. But this is a special one. It's God's appointed day. It's been promised by all the revelations of the past, and the prophecies related to it you will find very clearly set forth in this chapter 5 of God Passes By that we were reading from earlier. Seal of the prophets, prophethood is finished. Now we have the full manifestations of God. We have the day of God. We have the face of God. We have the coming of the All-Merciful, who proclaims his cause to all mankind and establishes the previous prophets clearly in their divine station, and uncovers the wonders and mysteries of their revelations with respect to this day. So the whole thing ties together as one continuous outpouring from God through the centuries. And Baha'u'llah has come to unite our vision, to establish the unity of religions. That sometimes we hear as I understand, a rather mistaken approach to compliment people on if they believe their faith and they're following it, then we haven't anything to say to them. We have nothing new, because this is not a new revelation. I mean, it's a new revelation, but it's not something new. But that's a mistaken understanding on our part, perhaps through what we've hearsay that we have about the faith rather than by clear study of the writings. But there, whoever hasn't heard, who's heard of this faith and hasn't recognized it, is in a very precarious position with moving on to the next life. Uh, of course, God is in the only position to know whether we've heard it correctly, or perhaps the faith has not been conveyed to us in the right spirit in some way that we have formed a prejudice against it or so on, or the people have formed this. But we really are talking about in this day, once you hear about the revelation, your own religion is judging you. Your own religion is telling you what you have to recognize. If you can't recognize, then you've really denied your founder of your own religion and rejected the proofs of God from all eternity. I mean, it's terrific responsibility that the individual has in that case. Now, they don't have that responsibility if we haven't conveyed the faith to them. We become the trumpet. We become the last judgment by offering this to them. So see what a delicate thing it is that we try to teach our own selves so that our nature reflects as much as possible the revelation itself, so that it makes, through divine confirmations and the attraction of the Holy Spirit and the shining of the love of God through our beings when we're speaking to other individuals, we can awaken them to the reality of the faith, or we can warm the rocks, so to speak. He says, even the rocks will wake up if we give the faith in the right spirit. But that's the responsibility we have, and then the trust we have to put that when we arise and move and act, it attracts divine confirmations, and those confirmations flow into the souls of our listeners at best. And it's so important that we know how to do that, and in our teaching, in our conversations, in our pioneering, all of this should should reflect all of these truths. Let's see now what the next. Again, now, how is it that the whole of mankind is in the throes of this terrific process of disintegration and integration that Shoghi Effendi spells out so clearly in his writings? He quotes Baha'u'llah. Through the movement of our pen of glory, we have, at the bidding of the omnipotent ordainer, breathed a new life into every human frame and instilled into every word a fresh potency. All created things proclaim the evidences of this worldwide regeneration. Now, one of our problems, I think, is many of us are blinded to this. We say, where are the evidence of this worldwide regeneration? And this is a question of our purifying, removing the veils from off of our heart, the veil of egotism, the veil of self-sufficiency, that we're the center of the universe. And then our own passions, which puts the love of anything before the love of God and therefore dims that in our heart and enables us not to see these evidences of worldwide regeneration, which are so prevalent in the creation at this point, we're told. Okay. This is the most great, the most joyful tidings imparted by the pen of this wronged one to mankind, the greatness of this day. Again, Baha'u'llah, how great is the cause, how staggering the weight of its message. This is the day of which it hath been said, O my son, verily God will bring everything to light, though it were but the weight of a grain of mustard seed, and hidden in a rock, or in the heavens, or in the earth. For God is subtile in form. I hope, friends, you'll go and find these passages in the dispensation and use them in your morning and evening readings till the more and more implications are born into the light of your consciousness and understanding. By the righteousness of the one true God, if one speck of a jewel be lost and buried beneath a mountain of stones and lie hidden beyond the seven seas, the hand of omnipotence will assuredly reveal it in this day, pure and cleansed from dross. Again, the speck has to turn to his maker. Again, love me that I may love thee. Again, reach out and beg and implore and supplicate and entreat and invoke the name of Baha'u'llah to start the process of understanding the hidden meanings of these passages. He that partaketh of the waters of my revelation will taste all the incorruptible delights ordained by God from the beginning that hath no beginning to the end that hath no end. Good gracious friends. Are we partaking of those waters, of the delights of the revelation? Have we followed the necessary essentials to become true seekers? We're not lacking in guidance in this respect. Everything's set forth to us, even a review of the teachings that Shoghi Effendi has gathered together in the advent of divine justice, propels us along the path of this regeneration. Every single letter proceeding from our mouth is endowed with such regenerative power as to enable it to bring into existence a new creation, a creation the magnitude of which is inscrutable to all save God. He verily hath knowledge of all things. Once again, it is in our power, should we wish it, to enable a speck of floating dust to generate in less than the twinkling of an eye suns of infinite, of unimaginable splendor, to cause the dewdrop to develop into vast and numberless oceans, to infuse into every letter such a force as to empower it to unfold all the knowledge of past and future ages. Again, this another passage illustrating this omnipotence of the manifestation of God, his control of everything. We live and move and have our being within his permission, within his grace, within his emanation of the Holy Spirit itself to us. This is the sustaining force of our existence, whether we recognize it or not. How often we don't see how close we are to him, and he tells us, yet he's not far from us. He's closer to us than our life fame. We are possessed of such power, which if brought to light, will transmute the most deadly of poisons into a panacea of unfailing efficacy. Well, that's also amazing, with certain implications for the field of healing and medical pioneering here. Now we come to an affirmation of the station of the true believers here, of the station of those that have embraced the revelation, absorbed the revelation, and taken steps forward to that spirit of constancy of his presence and of his grace. By the sorrows which afflict the beauty of the all-glorious. What an invocation just alone. Such is the station ordained for the true believer, that if to an extent smaller than a needle's eye, the glory of that station were to be unveiled to mankind, every beholder would be consumed away in his longing to attain it. For this reason it hath been decreed that in this earthly life, the full measure of the glory of his own station should remain concealed from the eyes of such a believer. Oh, lest we fall back on some position for ourselves, some imagined role that we have. If it were not for the favors of the blessed perfection, Abdu'l-Baha said, no one would have given us any importance. There are some souls who forget this fact, and then they fall from their high pedestals, and great is the noise thereof. Again, if the veil be lifted and the full glory of the station of those who have turned wholly towards God, and in their love for him renounced the world, be made manifest, the entire creation would be dumbfounded. We have no scale, friends, to compare ordinary human beings with the full glory of the station of those who have embraced the cause of God and renounced the world and practiced the laws of Baha'u'llah and embraced his presence in their, who have embraced the presence in their lives. And there's no comparison between our ordinary position as human beings and if we attain to those favors. And this is what he's calling us to here, seems to me. Now, this is, comparing the past dispensations, and in this case, comparing the station of the letters of the living, which is within our dispensation. In a sense, it's this preliminary dispensation of the Bob. But think of that compared to this, what he's saying now. If all the peoples of the world be invested with the powers and attributes destined for the letters of the living, the Bob's chosen disciples, whose station is 10 times more glorious than any which the apostles of old have attained. And if they one and all should, swift as a twinkling of an eye, hesitate to recognize the light of my revelation, their faith shall be of no avail, and they shall be counted among the infidels. Again, how important it is for us to remember to pray for those we mentioned the faith to, that the seeds of the offerings of the friends may sprout and develop within their souls. The Bob's disciples, a station 10,000 times more glorious than any which the apostles of old have attained. So tremendous is the outpouring of divine grace in this dispensation that if mortal eyes could be swift enough to record them, within the space of a single day and night there would stream verses of such number as to be equivalent to the whole of the Persian Bayan. The French, don't have a English translation available to us, but the French translation of the Persian Bayan fills 4 volumes. And here Baha'u'llah is promising in the space of a single day and night, verses equivalent to that would flow. This is many times now the outpouring of the revelation vouchsafed to Muhammad. This is this day of God is just so far beyond our calculations. But I think the repetition of these, and I think reading these quotations, friend, if I could suggest out loud, and letting the spirit of them settle into our souls and clear the dust from off the mirrors of our hearts so that the light of these verses can fall into the depths of our inner beings and of the gifts that God has placed within us, and animate those gifts and make them not just potential, but something that begins to make its unique appearance and offering in the world. So important. Give heed to my warning, O people of Persia. If I be slain at your hands, God will assuredly raise up one who will fill the seat made vacant through my death. For such is God's method carried into effect of old, and no change can ye find in God's mode of dealing. No way, friends, to make the cause go away. It's here. It has been kneaded into the very nature of the world around us. We have this marvelous mentions in the writings of the faith about 2 books. On the one hand, we have the book of creation, and on the other, the book of Revelation. And Abdul Baha says these 2 books are in absolute correlation. They reflect each other. And that the more we study the book of Revelation, the greater our capacity to penetrate the meanings of the book of creation, which in a sense is like the scientific method of looking at them, discovering things and concentrating on them, meditating about them, drawing out the gifts of the sciences which are present through the Supreme Concourse, through the detached souls who constitute the leaven from the spiritual world for this world, The sensitive souls receive the inspiration of these and discover then the mysteries of the world of creation, which come out in the form of sciences and technologies and so many different things because of the force of this revelation that have already burst upon the world. So that every day now there's more discoveries than may have been made in decades in the past. Suddenly all this knowledge is coming. It's impossible to calculate the kinds of discoveries that are being made on every front, in every front of human endeavor in this moment. How is that reflective of the day of God? Why has this happened? Why has the gears of mankind so radically changed from before 1844? Questions to ponder. Another amazing promises of Baha'u'llah here. Should they attempt to conceal his light on the continent, he will assuredly rear his head in the midmost heart of the ocean, and raising his voice proclaim, I am the life giver of the world. And if they cast him into a darksome pit, they will find him seated on the earth's loftiest heights, calling aloud to all mankind, lo, the desire of the world is come in his majesty, his sovereignty, his transcendent dominion. And if he be buried beneath the depths of the earth, his spirit soaring to the apex of heaven shall peal the summons. Behold ye the coming of the glory. Witness ye the kingdom of God, the most holy, the gracious, the powerful. His spirit soaring in the apex of heaven. Friends, again, absorbing the influence of these verses will greater insight into the world of creation and the processes that are unfolding themselves in the world of creation. The book of Revelation, we have the science of this world and the truth and knowledge coming to us from the divine realm through the insulation surrounding all of us of these holy souls that act as the leaven of the world. Are they leavening us? Are they leavening you? That's the question we want to ask ourselves. Let us not fall short in invoking the promised blessings inherent in these divine verses of God. Within the throat of this youth, there lie prisoned accents which, if revealed to mankind to an extent smaller than a needle's eye, would suffice to cause every mountain to crumble, the leaves of the trees to be discolored, and their fruits to fall. Excuse me. Would compel every head to bow down in worship and every face to turn in adoration towards this omnipotent ruler who in sundry times and in diverse manners appeareth as a devouring flame, as a billowing ocean, as a radiant light, as the tree which rooted in the soil of holiness lifteth its branches and spreadeth out its limbs as far as beyond the throne of deathless glory. Lots of things to meditate on there, friends. Shoghi Effendi calls us to prayer and study of the writings, and then he says, and then we need to meditate. Meditation is a different process from the invocation and recitation of the verses. We have to go back and, if you will, draw out the influence of these holy words Ponder them, reflect, consider on each of them. Think of the faith in the diverse manners in which Baha'u'llah compares it to a flame, to an ocean, to radiant light, to a tree rooted in the soil of holiness. Shoghi Effendi has provided all of this. He's chosen it. He's translated these passages. He's given us this blessed gift, friends. He it is in the shadow of whom overshadows all mankind. Now, the shadow of Shoghi Effendi over all mankind certainly is not a material shadow, it's a spiritual shadow. So the fact that he's not present physically with us, I shouldn't think in any manner disturbs the influence that he has from the spiritual shadow which he casts upon us, and which is the inheritance of his bestowal, the heritage that he gives us through his vision, through his actions, through his building of the world's center of the faith, through all the different steps he took in his lifetime. The influence that continues to act on us in a very powerful manner. Reading the writings of Shoghi Effendi, that's the whole idea of this. Now, this quotation, the hand of omnipotence hath established his revelation upon an unassailable and enduring foundation. Storms of human strife are powerless to undermine its basis, nor will men's fanciful theories succeed in damaging its structure. What a marvelous promise. The House of Justice quoted this in its messages several times. The revelation is on an unassailable and enduring foundation. Trust in this, friends, whatever the outer circumstances of the trajectory ahead of us, the different problems we will face, the calamities that are promised to rain down upon us, all these things, let us hold fast to this promise. Let us never forget it. Let it continue to feed our trust in God and in his actions. Friends, let us consider again now, we talked earlier about the station of the manifestation of God. He's all-encompassing and so on. And we approach and see and witness the wonders of God and of the Godhead in the person, station, and splendor of the manifestation of God. Baha'u'llah here describes for us this nature. Extraordinary passage. Naught is seen in my temple but the temple of God, and in my beauty but his beauty, and in my being but his being, and in myself but his self, and in my movement but his movement, and in my acquiescence but his acquiescence, and in my pen but his pen, the mighty, the all-praised. There hath not been in my soul but the truth, and in myself naught can be seen but God. Friends, here we have the manifestation of God manifesting himself in his supreme station, still veiled in so many ways, but casting aside the veils of previous dispensations, reflecting to a degree that we've never seen before in a relative way in the world of our creation, where we live ours and develop and have our being. A wonderful passage to read with respect to our prayers who are we turning to in prayer? Again, Baha'u'llah pronounces, the Holy Spirit itself hath been generated through the agents of a single letter revealed by this most great Spirit, if ye be of them that comprehend. Within the treasury of our wisdom there lies unrevealed, a knowledge, one word of which, if we chose to divulge it to mankind, would cause every human being to recognize the manifestation of God and to acknowledge his omniscience, would enable everyone to discover the secrets of all the sciences and to attain so high a station as to find himself wholly independent of all past and future learning. Other knowledges we do as well possess, not a single letter of which we can disclose, nor do we find humanity able to bear even the barest reference to their meaning. Thus have we informed you of the knowledge of God, the all-knowing, the all-wise. The day is approaching when God will have, by an act of his will, raised up a race of men, the nature of which is inscrutable to all save God, the all-powerful, the self-subsisting. And heard through commentaries by pilgrims who were in the presence of the guardian and the hands of the cause in the Holy Land, that this new race of men, the quality of this new race of men, what characterizes it? He said all the Baha'is can be a part of this new race of men, but he said we aren't automatically a part of it. Because he said the character of it is the submission of our will, the complete that the will of God rules in us. And he said, this is the nature of the race that's coming. It acts according to the will of God. It reflects God's purpose. And what can you only imagine what the flowering and fruition this divine civilization is going to have. Shoghi Effendi in his talks sometimes reduced things he described in a fuller term in his writings. For instance, he talks about the revelations of the Bab and Baha'u'llah like being like seeds. They've been planted in the world, being in this world that we live in. And then they've been nurtured, they've been watered, and they've been nurtured by the blood of 20,000 martyrs. And then by that, the young plant, the tree of revelation, has started growing and put out its first branches and leaves. And it's developed into this young tree, which he said is the characterization, we could say, of the administrative order of the faith that is growing in the womb of the world. It's not yet manifest. It's not world order. World order is when it comes of age. World order, Shoghi Effendi said in this instance, he says, when the tree of the cause bringeth forth blossoms, flowering. That is the world order of Baha'u'llah. And then when those flowers mature into fruit, that is the stage of divine civilization. So we have the tree that is green and giving forth its leaves in this present stage of the development of the cause, the administrative order of the cause. Then the administrative order of God graduates, becomes transformed into world order of Baha'u'llah, where the institutions of the faith will act with sovereignty amongst the nations of the world. All of this, while God is raising up from all of us, from our own inner nature, this new race of men, if you will. Ere long, forth the hands of ascendancy and might, hands who will arise to win victory for this youth, and who will purge mankind from the defilement of the outcast and the ungodly. These hands will gird up their loins to champion the faith of God, and will in my name, the self-subsistent, the mighty, subdue the peoples and kindreds of the earth. They will enter the cities and will inspire with fear the hearts of all their inhabitants. Such are the evidences of the might of God. How fearful, how vehement is his might. This passage was cited in the Advent of Divine Justice, also with reference to the hands, and in those quotations which Shoghi Effendi said, all have application to what's going on in the Baha'i world at present. And we saw the raising up of hands of the cause. A number of hands of the cause have been acting in the world. We didn't know who they were, but after they've been identified, after those named by Baha'u'llah himself, those that the master confirmed as having station of hands, and those that Shoghi Effendi appointed posthumously. Those who they've at the ground level of the cause have been championing the faith around the world. My life has been so greatly blessed because I was drawn into association with the hands of the cause and became a part of the institution of the International Teaching Center, which was the continuity of the powers and in nature of the hands of the cause in the Holy Land, which is now accompanying the House of Justice in its activities. The hands of the cause, what an extraordinary group of individuals they were. The hands, when they met, they wondered about, could they appoint, who could appoint more hands? It was dependent on the House of Justice to look into that. But for that, they considered a little bit, what were the qualities of the hands? They examined each other. They looked at each other. They reviewed those looking, why my hand? Why are your hands on? And they were so diverse in character, each one quite unique, very much in the nature of the cause of God, who says that the reflection of the individual is also a reflection of the name of God, the one, the unique. So that means each soul refracts and reflects the power and light of God in a unique way that no other soul ever has or ever will. That means you have contributions to make to the cause, which nobody else can make. Silly the person who envies others' services in the cause. Arise and unfold the wings of your own inner nature and make your contributions to the faith. The hands also, then they said they found, after searching out, they found there was nothing they had in common except total dedication to the guardian. They were the hands of the guardian. He was the head of the faith and they were his hands, and he used them in the world. He sent them on missions. He had them accomplishing things for him on his behalf, investigating things for him. These were the hands, that the living hands that he started appointing in 1951. I think, friends, I think the total list of the hands, they give about 50 of them in all. To go back and look at that, I don't remember that. Okay, let's see. We're coming to the end of the day. Let's go over to the chat and look at what do we have here? Huh? this, and then this. Is this on now? No. Where? This? Just a second. We're going to get the chat up in front of you here. Can you all see the chat list? I don't know. Okay, the top one here says, as Baha'u'llah has started a new Baha'i cycle, what will be the station of the future dispensations? We had that question posed in the foreword of God Passes By, and he said, what will be the station of those prophets of God who appear under the shadow of Baha'u'llah? They will be independent with regard, Shoghi Effendi is defined, with regard to their own dispensations. They can change the laws of the Akdas and so on. But from a spiritual point of view, they're all under the shadow of the Baha'i cycle and therefore of Baha'u'llah himself. That's why the Baha'i cycle of 500,000 years becomes very significant. The Adamic cycle was 6,000 years. Compare that with 500,000 years. Huh?
Question highlight.
I don't see it. No, which one you want? This one. How can we use social media to teach the faith? But I'm taking this one first here. Baha'u'llah absolutely renders all previous manifestations of God obsolete and unevolved, and past circumstances which were all barbaric people. No, not quite. It's a little bit too much to say that, but surely they were preliminary. We've read that in these very statements and stuff. If it were not for the coming of Baha'u'llah, no previous manifestation of God, he said, would have appeared, because they're all preparatory to his coming. So their position was as stepping stones leading to this most great revelation, which then prevails throughout this universal cycle. And the manifestations of God are only obsolete in the social teachings which they brought, which were adapted for the times that they lived in. And we're in a new social circumstance now, and we have new social rulings and laws set forth in the Akdas and by the Universal House of Justice. We do appear somewhat barbaric, but not because of those past circumstances. Let's see, let me... How far in the past you have to go back to know of an apostle of old with only one 10,000th of one of the Bob's chosen disciples? Religious truth is relative and not absolute. I think we're talking about the Adamic cycle and not before that. There's a question here about what prayers would you suggest are particularly suited for someone with whom we have mentioned the Baha'i faith? I'd have to think about that. I use different ones. Some of the shorter ones of the Bab immediately after, one could think of those, but they're wonderful prayers. Look in prayers and meditations and see which ones are suitable for this and make recommendations back to us. Okay. Old Israel, Moses appeared and raised them. Thus was the reign of Solomon brought about, and science and art were made known. After a lapse of time, the Israelites deteriorated. Yes, this is why we have ongoing dispensations. What place does artificial intelligence play in the future? I'm sure I can't penetrate that one. Trust to the scholars of the faith and to the universal laws of justice to suggest answers to that question. Go ahead. Comment on racism as one of the three false gods. The promised, as based on page 113 of Promised Days Come. Well, it's clearly one of the three false gods. And people have worshipped it, and governments have been overrun and taken up because of racist positions with very tragic results. Racist positions and also class positions, or both of those have been deadly in the last century. Comment on communism is one of the three false gods. Clearly, the placing of any single class of people above all the rest doesn't coincide with our principles or with the principle Baal has pronounced of the oneness of mankind. And Shoghi Effendi elaborating on this, what does this oneness of mankind imply? So we condemn, not politically communism, but the doctrine that any single class above others and be more privileged, or any single race should be raised above class and be given special privilege, or in the third, nationalism, that any single nation should stand above all other nations. That's the third of the false gods. These are three false gods. Go and read in the Promised Days Come of the Guardian, the section about this, and I think you'll discover more answers to your questions. Here's nationalism. Now, we just mentioned that. It's one of the three false gods. Okay. I think that's the end of it for now. Friends, I think we're past the hour, a couple minutes past the hour. Again, it was a privilege to pass this time with you, and just bear in mind that everything I say is based on my own limited understanding and is intended to inspire you to go back to the writings of the faith and find all the mistakes I've made and clarify it in your mind and use it as the basis of your inspiration. This is just encouragement, so to speak. Have you been missing out on reading Shoghi Effendi? Well, the whole point of this is to make you think perhaps you've missed something and go back to it again. So I'll say goodbye to you for now, and we'll see you next week.